Arise News, awards, and beyond. You're watching Arise, the world's standout news channel. Arise News, awards, and beyond.
Feel the pulse of the planet. From New York to Nairobi, London to Lagos. Our world is connected. Our stories intertwined. Join us as we navigate the news that shapes our lives. News through the voices that live it, the experts that make sense of it, and the leaders that shape it. Our network of correspondents around the world ensure that you don't miss a thing. Trust us to bring you unfiltered news, deep dives, and powerful conversations. The world never stops, and neither do we. Every second counts, and every story matters. Give us 60 minutes, and we'll give you the world.
All right, good morning. You're watching the morning show right here on the Arise News, your standout global channel. My name is Rufai Oseni.
Good morning, I'm Ayo Myro Essay.
Good morning, I'm Adifemi Akinsoya. We have got a great show lined up for you this morning over the next 3 hours. So sit back, grab a cup of tea, and let's kickstart your day because the morning show begins right now.
After his appeal to governors to comply with the judgment of the Supreme Court and remove their grip on local government statutory allocations, President Bola Tinubu last week threatened to invoke executive order to ensure compliance with the judgment of the Supreme Court. Tinubu issued the threat on Friday night while speaking at the All Progressive Congress APC National Executive Committee NEC meeting. He had earlier appealed to them at the National Caucus meeting held last Thursday night, noting that the autonomy of the local councils is being eroded. So joining us later to discuss President Tinubu's threats to governors over local government autonomy, if it will indeed get governors to heed to the directive, is Megaji Mato, a senior advocate of Nigeria.
Also, we shall be engaging Umar Sani, a chieftain of the PDP alongside Amma Abraham, suspended Abia PDP chapter chairman. We will be discussing the intervention by INEC chairman, Professor Joash Amupiton, to resolve the leadership crisis rocking the People's Democratic Party and whether this initiative signposts a possible pathway to peace in the party.
We'll also catch up on news making headlines across the globe. I'll bring us updates on the foreign scene with the World Brief, and I'll also review today's newspaper headlines from across the globe. Also, Rosa Sadiri will give us an update with his global business outlook. Ebi Iyomon will be taking us through sporting activities across the globe, while Oji Okwe will fill us in on what is trending around the world. She'll also highlight impactful stories on the milestones and our good news report. It's going to be all of that and a whole lot more today on The Morning Show.
now we take a look at news stories making headlines around the globe. First of all, we start with the Nigeria and the United States collaboration, who have launched a coordinated security operation aimed at dismantling terrorist enclaves across multiple parts of the country, signaling a renewed push to degrade the operational reach of violent extremist groups and restore state authority in affected communities. The joint effort, involving Nigeria's security agencies and U.S. technical and advisory support, is focused on intelligence-driven raids, surveillance and disruption of logistics networks believed to sustain insurgent and terror cells operating in remote and urban locations. This day, our sister publication learns that the operation is prioritizing precision actions during the mapping and surveillance activities and is designed to limit civilian harm while striking high-value targets, with the collaboration building on long-standing defense and counter-terrorism ties between both countries. Meanwhile, the military and police authorities have announced extensive security measures, including large-scale deployment of personnel and operational assets nationwide to ensure a peaceful and crime-free Yuletide season. The Defense Headquarters disclosed that the Armed Forces of Nigeria, working in collaboration with other security agencies, have intensified operations across the country, particularly in areas assessed as vulnerable to criminals and terrorist threats. In other news, Nigeria's Minister of Information and National Orientation, Mohammed Idris, says the ongoing reforms under President Bola Tinubu may be tough now, but they will yield significant benefits in the coming year. At the government end-of-year media briefing in Abuja, Idris acknowledged the pains Nigerians are experiencing as a result of policy changes. He stressed, however, that the administration remains confident the reforms will strengthen the economy, improve governance and deliver lasting dividends to citizens.
Our gross domestic product, as GDP, grew by 3.98% in the third quarter of 2025, demonstrating resilient and sustained expansion in the non-oil sector. Significantly, headline inflation has now declined for 8 consecutive months to stand at 14.45% in November 2025. Food inflation, as you also know, is also on a steady downward trend. Our external reserves have strengthened to approximately $44.56 billion, providing a robust buffer that stabilizes our currency and assures international investors of the seriousness of this administration to reposition its economy. Nigeria has recorded a trade surplus also in 2025 of 6.69 trillion in the third quarter of 2025, which represents a 27.29% growth year on year. The temporary pains of reforms are yielding to permanent gains. President Tinubu's vision for Nigeria is big, his strategy is unambiguous, and his resolve is unshakable. We are consolidating stability. We are protecting our homeland. We are empowering our youth. We are building a nation where every citizen has the agency to thrive and to succeed in this country. This is the Nigeria that President Bola Ahmed Tinubu is building. Together with all of you, together with all Nigerians, there is indeed in the horizon a Nigeria that is truly on the move, a Nigeria that will be a darling for all those living outside this country.
Well, National Security Advisor Malam Nuhu Ribadu said President Bola Tinubu was pleased with Rivers State Governor Siminalayi Fubara over what he described as his responsible leadership. Ribadu stated this when he led a presidential delegation comprising Minister of Works David Umahi, Minister of Environment Balarabe Lawal, Group Chief Executive Officer of the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited Bashir Ojulari and others on a courtesy visit to Fubara at government Government House, Port Harcourt. Ribadu said with the current turning point in Nigeria, the country would not be what it used to be again. He stressed that things were changing and it was starting with Ogoniland. The National Security Advisor also attributed the recent Yola oil spill at an oil field site in Pean local community in Kan local government area of River State to sabotage, threatening to ensure that all those involved would face the full wrath of the law to serve as a deterrent to others. Ribadu issued this threat while inspecting the level of damage caused by the oil spill. Arise correspondent Andy Omano has the details.
Nigeria's National Security Advisor, Nuhu Ribadu, is visiting the Ikpean community, an OSP site in Rivers State. On his entourage are the Minister of the Environment, the Group Managing Director, CEO of the NNPCL, and other top government functionaries. Though Ribadu is happy that all stakeholders in Ogoniland have given a nod for the resumption of oil production after more than 3 decades of suspension, he expressed strong reservations about those whose stock in trade is sabotage, saying that continued oil spill is bad for humans and the environment.
Ogoni today is different from what it used to be. Tragedy of 30 years is being completely addressed now, and a new chapter is open. We want to use the opportunity of this moment to appeal to people. Let's work together for the good of all of us. This wealth belongs to the community. This wealth belongs to all of us. Let's make it work. Let's not allow few individuals, selfishly, who do not just get it, come and damage, and the damage will be extensive.
The Minister of the Environment is however optimistic that the Yola oil spill will be tackled so as to safeguard the community.
When I went and saw what I saw, it was quite disturbing, and we hope that this thing will never happen again. And I believe was what we have discussed there while we are there with the NSA, the arrangement that is being put in place to address all similar areas that may be a potential area of this kind of spillage. So we are going to do that. We are going to approach it. And like we are made to understand that if there were activity around that area, this would not happen.
The GMD/CEO of NNPCL says the Office of the NSA and the Ministry of Petroleum are working to forestall a recurrence in other oil sites across the Niger Delta region.
The first pass of the GIV is being conducted, but there's a need for a second pass. The first pass was conducted when the spill was still very high, the pressure was very high, and the environment was not very, very safe. Now that things have calmed, I'm sure they will do appropriate repeat to ensure that things are sorted out. With respect to the questions around securing other areas, I think we've also had conversations with as you know, the NSC also came with the military, the security agencies there with us as well to see for themselves. And I think he has given directive that this should not happen again.
Chairman of Kana local government area is seeking more collaboration between all tiers of government and other stakeholders to ensure a smooth resumption of oil production in Ogoniland.
As a local government, we've been coming, we're in touch with the community, we are doing a lot of damage control. As you can see at the end, NSA and his team, they have left. I'll be here to talk to the farmers and then, of course, to provide certain support pending when the government will provide whatever they would provide. However, it is important for operators and drivers of this process to understand that at the local government level, we are closest to the people.
Prior to the Speyside visit, the NSA and his entourage had paid a courtesy call on Governor Sim Fubara at the government house in Port Harcourt, inspected a section of the East-West Road with the Minister of Works, and visited the University of Environment and Technology, as well as the Industrial Park and Taba General Hospital, all in Tai, Gokana, Kana local government areas of Rivers State. From Port Harcourt, Andy Omano, Arise.
Another news, Chairman, Presidential Fiscal Policy and Tax Reforms Committee, Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, yesterday declared the controversial tax regulations currently in circulation as fake. There had been allegations that the reform documents recently signed by President Bola Tinubu into law were different from what the National Assembly had passed. But Oyedele, in an interview, said any allegations over alterations of the original tax laws passed by the National Assembly could only be established both by the gazetted copies and if compared with the harmonized version of the Senate and House of Representatives. Oyedele said though he had seen the gazetted copy, but in his words, we do not have the officially harmonized bill certified by the clerk of the National Assembly and transmitted to the president, end of quote. He said in furtherance, what is in the media did not come from the committee set up by the House. We should allow them to conduct their investigation. Ultimately, this issue is not just about tax reform laws, it is about process. Reacting to calls for the suspension of implementation of the tax law on January 1 to avoid chaos, Oyedele said misinformation remained a real challenge. He said delayed implementation will rob small businesses of BI8 tax reliefs, among others. One of Nigeria's foremost accountants and a towering figure in the country's professional and corporate landscape, Arthur Christopher Mbanefo, yesterday died at the age of 95. A distinguished Nigerian accountant, diplomat, educational administrator, and elder statesman, his passing marks the end of a remarkable life of service to Nigeria and the international community. Mbanefo was Nigeria's former permanent representative to the United Nations and former pro-chancellor of the Universities of Lagos, Obafemi Awolowo, and Ahmadu Bello. He was a fellow of the Institute of Chartered Accountants in England and the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria. The Odu of Onitsha had his early professional years spent as a partner in the firm Akintola Williams and Company, Nigeria's oldest indigenous accountancy practice, where he worked from 1961 until 1986, eventually becoming senior partner. Later, he founded his own management consultancy, providing financial and corporate advice to government, business, and international institutions. Mbanefo's influence extended far beyond accountancy. Known for his probity and intellectual depth, he served on several boards of Nigeria's leading corporations and financial institutions, helping to guide governance and strategic decision-making in an era of economic transformation. From us at Arise News, we pray for that he rests in peace and comfort for his loved ones he's left behind. It's definitely a big loss to Nigeria, his family, and of course his community and his state. But Adefemi Rufai, your take on the stories this morning. Great. We're still celebrating the fact that the children are back home before Christmas, and we'll definitely be bringing updates in the course of not just today's show, but I believe throughout the shows here on Arise News today. But beyond that is the visit of a delegation to Rivers State. Yes. We can trace that back to the Pian community oil spill that happened back in August, the fire outbreak and so on. And then, of course, the other stories around the president and so on.
Well, first of all, I just have to say, being on this seat, I mean, I always have a lot of respect for the both of you and what you have to do, but these are a lot of stories that you have to put your thoughts on. So I take off my hat to you both. Congratulations, well done. But in all seriousness, perhaps let's start with Niger State, because on its face, it's a good thing that we are approaching Yuletide season. Christmas is a few days away, and we have the good news that some of these children are back. But as you rightfully mentioned during the show yesterday, we have to be very careful with our language and the rhetoric, because if we say they've all been released, but that's actually not the fact, it is difficult, because then everyone is celebrating their release and the fact that they are safe now. But consciously, you forget that there are people still left behind. And when there isn't the public being well informed, when the media, for example, aren't putting out that type of information, it is dangerous, because, again, most importantly, the people who are still in captivity feel forgotten. There isn't the urgency, there isn't the pressure on the security apparatus to go and get them. And also, as a rule of thumb, it also hurts us as a nation when we don't have accurate data. I think that one of Nigeria's worst kept secrets is that we do struggle with data. This being the case is difficult in and of itself, because when it comes to kidnappings, I can understand that immediately it may be hard to decipher how many people have been taken, who was gone, what their names are. That is, I think that the responsibility falls from the top all the way down to the bottom, so that schools, who are the primary caretakers of these children, should know off the bat, these are the names, date of birth, addresses of all of these children who are missing. You say that you've rescued X amount. Okay, let's tally and see what we're doing in terms of data. So I think it is quite concerning that clearly there is, as we heard from Charles, a discrepancy on the number. If we're saying, as was the case yesterday, that they have all been released, but when we actually crack the numbers, actually more than 30 are still unaccounted for. It's uncomfortable, to say the least, and it does leave a bitter taste on the celebrations that we should be having. As I was saying to Charles, I really want to hear from the children. I know that it's difficult because they are children. There is, of course, a duty of care to protect them and their experiences, but I think that it serves a national interest if they themselves can use their voice alongside their parents and say, this is what happened to us. We were asleep here and they came to take us. They took us here. This is how we survived. Were we able to... I just want to know what it was like. Were you able to use the toilet if you wanted to, for example? How were you feeding? Did they give you water? Did this feel as though your protection was important to them, or did you feel as though you were a pawn in somebody else's game? I would love to hear from the children themselves, and I think that this is a stark reminder. And when we're talking about the lapses in Nigeria's security, it has a human face, it bears a human cost, and everyone deserves to feel safe in their own country. There is that. I know that we also talked about the United States and the Nigerian government joining forces when it comes to intelligence sharing and doing recce's and making sure that when it comes to these different terrorist hotspots and enclaves, there is sound information. And just to the point of us being able to rebuild our data apparatus, that is also a good thing. I think that this day, and we'll get into it during the newspaper review, but I think this day did a good job of really balancing out the story, because international media, how some outfits took the story, it was quite alarming to hear, the United States, for example, had been conducting secret or covert flights looking at Nigeria's sovereign airspace. That can be quite concerning, but to be able to read this day's write-up and say, actually, this is a joint force, that they've been working together, that we are seeing the fact that some of these flights to go from Ghana, they fly across Nigeria and then return to Ghana. I think that type of information is needed to calm nerves, especially when we are already in issues with the United States. This CPC designation still falling over our heads. We've had 2 delegations come to our country, and the thing about both of the delegations, that when they are in Nigeria, the rhetoric seems to be quite friendly, that they seem to, it feels as though we're on the same page, but when they go back to their country, sometimes the rhetoric just changes. When Riley Moore went back to America and he was doing interviews with Fox News, what he said while he was completely different. So I think that it keeps us on our toes, nevertheless.
Excellent, thank you. Rufai, your take on these stories?
Okay, I'll quickly pay tribute to author Mbanefo of blessed memory. Great Nigerian, great statesman, professional, excellence at its peak, accountant per excellence, worked in Akitola Williams, and afterwards went to the public sector. You remember his work on the Rukife Committee on Crude Oil Sales in the 80s, that brought up a lot of revelations, but we all know what happened to that Rukife Committee report. It was just a lot of sound bites that came out of it. We still have those problems, pretty much. If you are taking Nigeria in the 80s and look at it today, the problems have not changed. It's just that the names of the people that are causing the problem have changed. Then he went ahead. They also served in government. I think Obasanjo brought him back, served in the UN. And I was also part of the state creation committee by Abacha. And he did a lot of work for Nigeria, and for God and for country. So may God continue to rest his soul. I'd like to talk about Taiwo Oyedele this morning. And I was very shocked when I saw his intervention on television. Equally, Taiwo Oyedele came out to say that, I don't have information too, as regards what the National Assembly is saying.
So he doesn't have the harmonized
So he doesn't have the harmonized copy. So somebody will have thought that you were part of the process. Even if it's for your own personal safekeeping. Once the harmonized copy came out, you couldn't get a copy? And then you're now saying, what they're probably circulating is fake. How is it fake? You don't have the harmonized copy. And then you went further to say on national television that you even called somebody on the committee that what they are circulating is fake. Were you supposed to call somebody and talk to the person on the committee investigating the shenanigan as regards to fraud? They were talking all the, let me use the word, alleged fraud or alleged forgery. Then the next thing, the way Taiwo Oyedele tries to limit it to a procedural matter, I mean, that even indicts the government even more. So we can't get a gazetted copy to align with an harmonized copy in this country. And you're saying it's maybe procedural issue because we have to enter it manually, and you're trying to excuse the ineptitude, try to call us stupid to our face. I mean, harmonized copy moves to the president. He signs it. National Assembly clerk gets harmonized copy, moves to the president. He signs it. When he signs it into law, we gazette it. It should be one long paper trail. National Assembly, presidency signs, gazette comes out. So if you are not telling us procedural issue based on that, and you're trying to say, oh, it's an age-long Nigerian problem, in fact, I think it stops short of saying it's a good crisis at some point. Maybe we can learn from it. We can learn from this ineptitude.
It was putting a spin on it.
It was putting a spin on it. Should it have even happened in the first place? Do you know what that does to your integrity? You're in the center of all of this. You help crafting with all of this. Then the last phase of the gaslighting I heard from Taiwo Oyedele was the fact that, then he starts to sell what will be the benefit if we don't pass the law in January and we don't start the law, that the tax cuts for workers and reduction in taxation and everything. I mean, so you didn't know that before, you didn't know that was going to happen before you claimed it. Then you now gave the advice in the end and said, okay, yes, we can just deal with those areas, expunge them from the laws while we settle the matter out. Yeah, I mean, that's a decent advice in the end. But you're now trying to sell what will become, I mean, you took a year to work on this. Was there this? We're saying do things properly. This might be true, this might not be true, we don't know.
Yeah.
But the committee has to sit to be able to tell us. But once somebody points out something that's an indictment on you, you've done a lot of things wrong in the first place. Number one, you've called somebody that's on the committee and you're pointing out something that is fake to him. I mean, so in the bid of trying to limit it and say there's fake news, misinformation, blame the media, gaslight people, punch them in the face and tell them you don't know what you're thinking about. And while all of this goes on, you now try to mitigate it. I say it's a procedural problem. That's the problem I have. Because when you call it procedural, it shows that people and the processes in government are not being done properly. Dear Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, I mean, you are a top shot in a consulting firm. You were brought in to be able to mitigate those procedural flaws. We just won the investigation. By the way, I hear the House of Reps will be going on recess soon. So probably even go on recess, we'll not be able to get a report of what has transpired, probably to next year, and the law will already be in effect or might not be in effect. I mean, the confusion, like Fela says, just breaks everybody.
Yeah, if the law is in effect, which of the laws will be in effect?
I mean, I don't even know.
So I think
because the National Assembly guys are definitely going to go for Christmas break at some point. And I'm not sure they're going to finish the investigation, or maybe they're going to finish it expressly.
The natural conclusion would be to put this on hold.
No, but Taiwo was telling you that if you put it on hold, that all the workers that have been, being hurt with the former tax regime will cry blood.
In the interest of due process and for integrity's sake, and because this is not a matter to be taken lightly, if indeed what is being alleged by Honorable Dasuki from the House of Reps, Sokoto PDP, that what the harmonized copy, what they passed from the National Assembly is different from the gazetted copy, then we cannot go on to implement a law that is under scrutiny. I think that's just basic. Whether or not it's in the interest of Nigerians, which it is. I mean, we've debated and talked about the merits and demerits of the joint tax law, joint tax reform. However, if there is a tampering with the outcome of what the House National Assembly passed, then it shouldn't happen. If the National Assembly is unwilling to make the sacrifice to not go on recess until this investigation is concluded, then we ought to wait to see the conclusion, because we cannot be implementing a law that's under scrutiny or is said to possibly even be fake or possibly has been tampered with. I think that's very important. What happened with Mr. Taiwo Oyedele, and I give kudos to him because I have said again and again that he did a fine job with this joint tax law. Very controversial. A number of people had things to say about different aspects. Some people agree or not agree with some of the areas like the capital gains tax and other things, other areas. But in terms of the formula sharing, the benefit to especially low-income earners, that has been highlighted. However, due process must be followed, and I believe that Nigerians deserve to get to the bottom of this, as it is criminal in nature if that law was tampered with. Now, moving on to the school, the abducted school children from Papiri, St. Mary's Catholic School. I think it's important to highlight the fact, and thanks a lot to Charles for that report. One of the things I would like to ask, I have a few questions, as I also have a few suggestions or recommendations. The first question is, what is the reluctance? Why is the government loath for journalists like Charles, our correspondent on ground, to speak to the parents? Like you mentioned, Adefemi, it is important for us to get the true fact, and we cannot shield them away. Just, number one, for public knowledge. Number two, for us to get a true picture of what really ensued. Number three, just to ensure that the parents and the children are getting adequate support. If there's nothing going on, then we should be able to have access to them, to speak to them, and to find out, even if we want to protect the children, can we talk to the parents? Also beyond that, yesterday I was watching the interview on our night show with Madam Ngozi, yes, Ngozi. I was speaking to the media aide to the proprietor of the school, and he himself confirmed that he could not confirm the number of students. He was reluctant to give a definite number because recall that the Christian Association of Nigeria had said the number of at least 315. And I've made the case for the point that we need to have these numbers to be able to know. And what can we do in the future to prevent things like this? Because we clearly have a data problem. Number one is to emphasize the importance of school registers. I remember when I was in school, you would take a roll call every single morning to know the number of children or students that are in school. Sure. That is important to enforce. Did the school have a school register? How many students signed into school that day, and how many children are not accounted for? That's an easy way to get these numbers. Number two is safety, and like people have been saying, why don't you ask? We have not been able to speak to the school or speak to parents of the student. Number two is safety for schools in Nigeria. When we talked about the bandits and kidnapping of children in schools, we said that these was also tantamount to a threat to education, particularly in the northern part of Nigeria that has the highest number of out-of-school children in Nigeria, and Nigeria making up the highest number of out-of-school children in the world. This is important for us to keep emphasizing, because if there's a threat to a critical aspect of development in Nigeria, then we should call it a state of emergency. It is important to note this. And so what is the reassurance for parents that when they send their wards to school, they send their children to school, their children will be safe? It then raises the question around the Safe School initiative, an investigation that's been instigated to ensure we find out what happened to the over $30 million that was raised to ensure that children in school were safe. So still a number of questions, and that's why I said this is a developing story. It's an ongoing conversation, and we hope to give you more updates as it happens. But at the end of it all is that there's joy and happiness that these children are back home and will be reunited with their parents before the Christmas holiday. However, there's still a few questions around that.
28 more people have been kidnapped again around Plateau. 28 more.
But that's why I said that there needs to be a reassurance. Even though they said that go around your duties, Christmas period, there needs to be more concrete reassurance for Nigerians to know that they'll be safe, especially for our children who are in school.